Hello, hi and welcome once again to The Week Today. Today we have a special program for you and it's to do with Kashmir. As the viewers know, there's been a dispute between India and Pakistan for a long time. But with the situation of Iraq and Syria and Iran on the border, we felt that the focus of Kashmir had moved off. So two shadow ministers, Dr. Jenny Tong MP and Patsy Carlton MP, including Councillor Ben Chefcott, who's an international advisor, the three of us went to Pakistan on an official delegation, totally including myself. Four, of course. I was leading the delegation. Once we got into Pakistan, we landed in Lahore first, where we were received by officials, briefed, and then from that point on, we were taken into Lahore, and then from Lahore, went into Islamabad. From Islamabad, we met high-level officials in Pakistan itself. And some of the people that we met was Raja Parvez, he's an MNA, and also Sardar Anwar, who's the president of AJK. This was a fact-finding mission, and the shadow ministers that went with me interacted at every level. They interacted with the government, with the opposition, as well as spoke to the press. Following this, we also spoke to people on the ground, both in Pakistan and in Kashmir. This also followed a visit to the refugee camp. I must say we were very, very grateful for all the people that helped and facilitated this delegation. I believe that this delegation speaks volumes. My colleagues who were with me were very, very impressed. We recently came back and we have the following footage which I'd like to now show you. The first stopover was a transit visit to the historic city of Lahore. We were well received by the political press as well as the official Internal Ministry for Foreign Affairs. Lahore played host for the transit stopover, the free gateway into Kashmir. While being welcomed and briefed, it was decided that our escort would take the delegation for a flying visit to the old nostalgic city of Lahore. It was as if we had been driven straight into the Mughal century, 500 years old, an empire built by dynasty stretching between Persia into India and post-partition Pakistan. As we walked up the inside of Lahore Fort, we could see the architectural splendor making our way through the grand entrance where once Mughal kings and princes in royal and military splendor paraded on elephant back. From the highest point we could see one of the largest mosques in the world, built during pre-British rule, the Badshah Mosque, twinned with the similar mosque in New Delhi, reflecting the spiritual connection between the two regions. While standing in the tranquility of a ruling class gone by, it was hard to envisage how partition now divided the two into separate nations, Lahore itself being easily within conventional attack distance from the border. It was notable that the city of Lahore had evolved through a modern architecture with wide roads, dual carriageways, flyovers and eye-catching buildings standing alongside two quite different historic periods, the Mughals from the east and the British from the west.
Fewer conflicts in Pakistan are extremely sophisticated and grown-up nations. You know, we're not talking about third world countries. We're talking about really decent people with good administration. Must surely somehow be able to resolve this one, you know, without British intervention. But that has been progressed by a US and a UK mediator to a senator, and on track, that peace agreement, and it's going ahead and it's doing well. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing, I have a very, very personal sort of connection with Kashmir. Long ago, Kashmir is paradise on earth. It's the most wonderful place. Now, this was in the 60s, and it was interesting saying that sort of thing is alleged in the press. Do you have any control over them? You know, going on. But we really want to know what we can do. What are the things?
I mean, do you perceive it as a struggle, as a right, as a law by the United Nations that should be implemented? I mean, you mentioned a number of points there. You referred to the Shimla Agreement. the Shimla Agreement doesn't supersede United Nations article, and the Shimla Agreement has actually failed. Because as people who are living in the West, who are involved in Western politics, we respect United Nations resolutions, and I'm sure that the Pakistani Kashmiri people and the Indian community would want to adhere to that. From your perspective, how do you see potential dialogue? Because there has to be potential dialogue. And in addition to that, is it important for Britain, America and the UN to be involved in this? Because since both countries have become nuclear powers,
Yes.
the world is now a stakeholder in this situation. And if there was a fallout, excuse the slang, but we'd all be roasted. You know, if you look at Chernobyl, and if you look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the effects of which are still bouncing around the
Nuclear wars and
stratosphere.
accidents aren't local.
Yes, they're global. And the situation has to be curbed because, I mean, just last year we saw the tension build up of 1.2 million soldiers from the Indian side, and obviously a significant defense build up on this side. And this is not really a conducive situation. And coming back to the Liberal Democrats, one thing I've got to stress is Liberal policy is part of our ethos, is every human being has the right to plebiscite, of self-determination. So how do you perceive this yourself with the rest of the world, being involved within trying to
But
resolve
also,
the situation?
Qassim, I mean, this is one of your strongest.
Give his views on this and maybe also his party's views.
Well, I think as my friend has very aptly remarked, for an issue between the two countries or issue of those millions of Kashmiris suffering in Kashmir. But now it has become a real issue for all of the world because it is a direct threat to the world peace. Because as the things are moving, our party, and especially our leader, Mohtamma Benazir Bhutto, had a very clear stand on this, that the Kashmir problem should be solved according to the resolution of United Nations. And once that resolution has been passed, all the world, all other countries who believe in freedom and who believe in peace and tranquility of this and security of this area and the whole world, they should stress upon the Indian government that they should accept that resolution and let Kashmiris decide their fate. They should be given the chance. They should be asked whom they want. If they want to be with India, it's all right. If they want to be with Pakistan, it's okay. If they want to have their own free will, all right. This is their own sweet will. And this is their basic right. They are being deprived since 55 years. And our party stand was, and especially Mohtamma Benazir Bhutto reiterated it many a times, that this should be taken as a very serious problem. And something must be done that at least the enmity and all this serious, sort of thing should be reduced. And tension should be reduced. It should not be escalated. Because it's going to be very dangerous because both the countries know they are nuclear power. And this can, as my friend has very aptly remarked, this can bring havoc to this region and to the world as well. So I don't know that what specifically Britain can do about it, but at least I think as a major power in the United Nations, Westall and the democratic power, they can stress upon India to build pressure on them that leave this problem for the Kashmiri people. Let them decide their fate. As my friend said, we had 2 and 3 wars on the same issue. I don't know whether we can afford another war on it. All our miseries, our poverty, living below the line of poverty is all because of this, that we have to build up so much a great war machinery. And same is the case with India. I think
I'd like a response on Jenny's view, because the point is that there are allegations being thrown on all sides, coming back to infiltration, terrorism, cross-border activity, and skirmishes. I mean, what's your view on that? How do you perceive this? Do you perceive this? Actually, maybe refer it back to yourself, being a journalist. How do you perceive the struggle of the Kashmiri people?
be made inevitable by India's bad handling or negligent handling of the situation. I mean, it was frustration which led to that. But as I said in my opening remarks, a time came when Pakistan tried to take over that, and that was a tragedy. And now, who controls the people holding the gun over there? No one knows really. Because when you have such a thing, then you get lone rangers and other people and you start off by something and that develops a momentum of its own. And I think a point has arrived where even if the Pakistan army, all the corps commanders sitting in conclave decide that no more infiltration, an end to the camps, there will still be people in Kashmir who will be defying, call it the writ or call it the command of the Pakistan army. Because there is great opposition. When under a combination of Indian and American pressure, General Musharraf announced certain steps in January.
I'd like to bring about some sort of rapprochement, improvement in the situation. The question is that India says that Kashmir is hands-off. We don't want any mediation, conciliation, arbitration, or any foreign person talking to us and to Pakistan. How would you see the situation? How would you as Britain and your party try and impose yourself, if I may say so, on this dispute?
Can I say that I want to start slightly before your question?
Okay, please do.
The question
Okay.
assumes that
Okay.
you can press a switch and something will... Once I was in Northern Ireland, I suddenly understood where the extra 2 or 3 dimensions came from, because they actually come from all of these conflicts and the 800 years of history, and the fact that however well you move forward, there will always be something that goes wrong that takes you some steps back again. And I've applied this reasoning, and I know others have applied the reasoning before me. We were actually having a conversation about Peter Mandelson, who is presently out of the government, a Labour member of Parliament, but who Jenny and I both believe is actually one of the most able members of Parliament that is there. And he, I think, probably made the breakthrough with getting a peace process really operating in Northern Ireland. Now, nobody would describe Northern Ireland as having resolved the conflicts. It hasn't resolved the conflicts. But it's a whole lot better than it was 10 years ago, and infinitely better than it was 20 years ago. And what is happening is that there's a gradual shuffling. I can only describe it as a gradual shuffling.
6 dimensions.
Into United Ireland, in Northern Ireland, it wouldn't have solved anything, because the people who lost would have still carried on their fight.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't have solved anything, and that's why I think it's just a little bit naive to suggest that it would all be settled if you just had a vote, even if you could determine who was going to vote and make sure it was fair. You know?
You can operate at several levels here, Jenny, and I think you have to have a background of what most people think is right and wrong. So it isn't right to kill people, it isn't right to achieve your ends by violent means.
But we're here to listen.
But
I wasn't old enough to contest an election before, so this is my first time in the parliament. And 71 war went on before I was born. So I wouldn't be knowing that much about the pre-65 relationships between India and Pakistan and how everything was going about then. But the point you just mentioned, I would very respectfully disagree with, is that you said it's not that easy. An American friend of mine, over here, I was just joking with her, and I said, "It's right of our debts, we're your allies. Come on, look what we've done." Unfortunately, we still belong to a third world country. We have to accept that. I'm not criticizing Britain or America. Please take it from me. I'm very pro-West. Reason being, you people have grown, you people have worked hard, you've built yourselves to be better, superior nations, and that's why in commerce you rule the world. But if you guys want to help, if you guys seriously want to help, like Now look at Mr. Blair. He's just going on and bashing Iraq like anything.
We entirely agree.
He's just doing it. And if US goes and attacks Iraq, British soldiers are again going to be the first ones who are going to enter Iraq and they're going to fight. Is that easy? When 80% of your population does not even want that. Is that easy? Your Prime Minister goes on national television in the Parliament and he says that Iraq is a direct threat to Britain's national security.
Can I just elaborate on that? I mean, Min Campbell made quite an interesting statement on this argument of Bush wanting to attack Iraq. I think, please correct me, I think he's made it very clear that there hasn't been any evidence found as of yet. And if any action needs to be taken, it has to go back to Europe for a second resolution. And if I'm right, Parliament has to reconvene to discuss it.
But explain to me what it is that you're making, because I'm not seeing the connection between what you're saying now.
The point is, like she very correctly said, Jenny very correctly mentioned the colonial past. If at that point Kashmir was settled appropriately, this wouldn't have been done. For all logic, one would say that for the past 7,000 years of human history, like nations who have ruled the world, strategies have changed over the years, over centuries, how to rule the world. So this was probably developed to divide and rule. Kashmir and another couple of states were left here for us and India to fight over for as long as we don't blow us up. Whatever, this is very debatable. If this wasn't done, it can still be settled. Plebiscite means both sides agreeing. If you can put pressure on India, which you definitely can. Pakistan is already there, where you can say the rubber stamp of the Americans right now. Willfully or for whatever reasons, we are there. And I support absolutely the anti-terrorism campaign. But likewise, as your allies, over the period of years, I would suggest and recommend and request you must intervene strongly, economically, whatever means you want it. You have the means to do it. Let's do it. Let's settle the Kashmir issue if you guys want to. Let's do it.
Yeah, all I'm asking is, and
Well, if I may ask Fawzia to answer this question,
please,
that is, we don't know when the Kashmir dispute will be settled, if at all. It may take, it's already 53 years old.
Exactly.
It may take another 50 years, but tell us, Fawzia, how would you address the humanitarian issue?
I think before answering this question, I would second what Pansy has said. Resolutions, conflict resolutions are not done within a day or within a certain period. It takes a gradual process, and then I feel that conflict can be eliminated. And I feel to sort of build up confidence on both the sides, it is important for Pakistan that it should stop cross-border terrorism, or they should stop this jihadi forces that are constantly aiding the insurgency that is happening in Kashmir. I think that the time has come that we should sort of decide what to do with the Kashmir issue. I don't think so that India would be easily would give in on the Kashmir issue. They consider it as an integral part of their country. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. This is for the first time I'm talking with
No, it's
such
fine.
You must be nervous.
senior
Fine.
people.
So interesting to hear what you say.
I feel that India is not going to make any compromise on Kashmir. They consider it as their integral part, and therefore Pakistan's claim on Kashmir, they have to reconsider this issue. promoting or supporting an insurgency is like, I mean, it's not something that would help both the nations. If an insurgency is happening, then what we should do is we should ask the Indian government to sort out this matter as soon as possible and talk about autonomy. They are asking for autonomy, give them the autonomy that they want. And at the same time, Pakistan and India should sort of strengthen their relationship, bilateral relationship. I think what Mr. Ayaz Amir and Mr. Bhandara has been saying, they are asking for mediation, for arbitration from other parties.
I never have.
Well, I feel this is an issue that both the nations should decide.
Yes.
Between themselves, we don't need arbitration. And
you both feel that outside help is not what's
I
needed?
feel otherwise.
Outside
both
help, I
companies.
think it's not a realistic option because the US and
There's no dispute as to where Azad Kashmir and Baltistan and Hunza belong to. These are all settled issues. This little narrow valley is only 33% of the geographic area of Kashmir. Now, I was reading recently an autobiography, a biography of Mrs. Gandhi, written by, a very well researched one by Catherine Frank. And the point made by her was that 4 attempts were made at Simla to persuade Mr. Bhutto to accept the line of control. Finally, he put up his hands and he said, "I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving at 6 in the morning." Helicopter was readied, and all was done. At 11:30 p.m., Mrs. Gandhi invited a meeting in the billiard room of the Viceregal Lodge. And for the first time, after 4 drafts had been rejected on the LOC, a principal secretary by the name of Haksa came up with the brilliant idea that drop the LOC. Let's talk about that. Kashmir for us is like the Franco-German dispute on Schleswig-Holstein or on the other one. The people wouldn't accept such a decision. Granted, there are people in the peripheries of Pakistan who may accept it, but the main populations over here would not accept the LOC. It hits the national psyche. It hits our well-being. You know, we are a traumatized nation. We were traumatized in 71. Radical surgery has already taken place over here. And the only thing that we have going at this point for our well-being and for our manhood, so to say, is that we feel that there should be some justice in Kashmir. Well, recently, I'm a great friend of India's and so on and so forth, but I've recently come up with a rather strange notion, and that is that Pakistan should withdraw from the Simla Agreement. Because our problems really go back to Simla. The problem, it cannot be resolved in a bilateral format. When one party says that A, there's no dispute, B, hands off, and C, it's our property. D, you're a nobody now in the matter. And Islamabad, it goes back to cross-border terrorism and all that. But once you're satisfied, that's all baloney.
Exactly.
Then we are talking in terms of a solution.
You know, we're on a friendship delegation. At the same time, it's fact-finding, and we want to have a good understanding as well. At the end,
other nations left in the subcontinent. and the theory stated that, you know, majority, Muslim majority areas and should be contiguous Muslim majority areas so that you can carve out a state, and then of course rest of the minority areas certain arrangement. So that's how Pakistan and India came into being. This I do not want to touch. I would like to talk of the princely states. And very rightly, if they like, they can be independent, or they can get together if it was possible to make another state. That wasn't the instrument of partition, and for whatever wisdom, rightly so. So all 500 British sovereignty, they were allowed to join one of the two dominions, India or Pakistan. And that is why when somebody says that there was no third option, so they had to join. And out of these states, I will come specifically to three. And one, of course, is the Jammu and Kashmir, and other was Hyderabad, and third was Junagadh. Now, the instrument of partition indicated 50-50. We commit to the world community that we will hold an independent plebiscite to decide the future of Jammu and Kashmir, whether they want to accede to India or Pakistan. And Security Council resolutions were accepted, and they accepted the same pledge of India, and Pakistan also said we will agree. Therefore, the point is that the instrument of accession is no more relevant. It becomes the property of the international community, in which India and Pakistan are accepted as parties. When Kashmiri people seeing that nobody is coming forward, neither the Indians are fulfilling their commitments, nor the United Nations is doing much. At that time, even they thought even Pakistan is not doing much. So Kashmiris, frustrated, picked up the arms, which they did in 1947, again second time. And they rose against the Indian occupation. And of course, you know, somewhere in between from 1989 to till to date, now this question of terrorism also came in. Now, frankly speaking, the movement that was started by the Kashmiri youth was entirely indigenous, and you know, it is part of history. It surprised Pakistan as much as it surprised India. Nobody knew what has happened. And you know, present Chief Minister in occupied Kashmir, Mufti Saeed, his daughter was kidnapped, and that is where the thing started. And then, of course, these youth of Kashmir, they rose in revolt, and there was a lot of repression by the Indian forces and all that. It continued till year 2001.
Welcome back. Here you've seen footage of the delegation. We had discussions at every level. They were very frank, and our shadow ministers came back totally charged up, understanding what are the problems in Kashmir. And it's very important for people in Britain and the international community to keep in touch with the situation of Kashmir and not to forget the plebiscite and the UN resolutions. I hope you've all enjoyed this program and it's been informative for you as well as for me. Until next time on The Week Today, I shall see you again. Thank you and goodbye.